Hello to all Cinemaster lovers. Hope you enjoy watching. Let's get started. Predatory animals have one job: to feed by consuming any living creature. Of course, these creatures typically reside in forests, far from human life. But what would you do if these predators are now among humans due to a natural disaster? It sounds strange. The events are going to get even stranger. So stay tuned until the end to see how things unfold. The movie begins with massive storms emerging across the United States. The news is all about these storms, warning people to stay indoors and not venture outside. A man and a woman trying to escape the storm, seeking refuge in a house and attempting to lock themselves in. It seems like they've just met each other for the first time. But the storm blows the door open, and the man is suddenly snatched away while standing in place. The woman with the man becomes increasingly anxious until a crocodile suddenly appears. She tries to fight it off, but unfortunately, it overpowers and kills her. Meanwhile, a group of dangerous criminals is being transported in a van. They are high-risk offenders, likely being transferred to the prison where they'll be held. The police officers riding with them also notice the unusual weather and are unsettled by it. The prison they're headed to is notified about the incoming criminals, and it's revealed that a woman is in charge of this facility. The prison itself is flooded to the point where it's difficult for anyone to move around properly. The prison begins taking all necessary precautions to prepare for the arrival of these dangerous criminals. A gang standing outside the prison, looking like they're waiting for a vehicle. The vehicle arrives, and they start preparing themselves. They intend to follow through with their plan, but unfortunately, their leader, Rafe, decides to change the plan and goes after them. The prison warden, Sheriff Joe Newman, calls out to Marcus and asks him, "What's with all this water flooding the place?" Marcus replies, saying that he's handling some things and will take care of it all. Meanwhile, crocodiles start appearing on the prison's roof, and they begin entering through the openings. Uncle Fozzie heads down to his room to take care of the tasks assigned to him. Meanwhile, the prisoner transport vehicle that the prison has been expecting arrives. Marcus starts his work, turning on the lights in his room. He notices some exposed wires and carefully removes them from the water to avoid getting electrocuted. At the same time, the armed gang shows up, and it seems like they're planning to break someone important out. The person in charge of the prisoners enters and starts talking to Joe, who explains that there's no food available for these prisoners. He casually replies, "It's fine. Let them go without food, it's no big deal." Marcus, struggling with the tasks he's been assigned and the water flooding his room, finds it difficult to move around. He suddenly feels something pulling at him, grabs his arm, and kills him. Meanwhile, the officer in charge of the prisoners tells them to avoid causing any trouble. The prisoners begin to disembark from the transport vehicle. Joe, along with her deputy, comes out to meet them. As Joe appears in front of the prisoners, everyone starts to harass her. The gang sees this as a great opportunity to attack the vehicle and capture the man they want. However, their leader is worried and advises them to stick to the plan to ensure its success. The prisoners arrive at the place where they will be held, and Joe begins to introduce herself. She explains the rules of the facility she manages. As she starts to get to know the prisoners one by one, they all ignore her and show a great deal of disrespect, except for one person who is respectful and was a police officer before being imprisoned. Each person is put in their cell, and we find that the water has reached up to them. One of the prisoners talks loudly to the police officers because he is talking to a fellow inmate in an inappropriate manner. Suddenly, a sound of gunfire, and it's realized that there is an attack on the prison. The prison director tries to defend the prison from the attacking gang. The prisoners hear the sound of gunfire, and the guards who are supposed to watch over them become anxious. One of them, driven by concern, grabs his weapon and goes out to see what's happening. The gang starts to enter the section, splitting up, and the officer who had previously emerged from the prison is seen. The prison director tells the officer to stay calm and not to act, communicating with him through sign language. Despite her instructions, he decides to attack the gang. As soon as he makes a move, he is shot dead immediately. However, justice is swiftly served when one of the gang members is also shot in retaliation. The gang manages to take over the prison and inquires about the location of the incoming prisoners. Joe provides them with the information about their location. In the prisoners' holding area, a racial conflict erupts, and their voices become loud and chaotic. The guards who are trying to manage the situation start shouting as the prison director descends to the holding area and sees what's happening. She orders the guard to put down his weapon, and the gang takes over the holding area. They demand that the cell of a specific prisoner they want be opened. The prisoner is then placed in a cell next to the other inmates. The gang decides to leave, but before they do, their leader demands that the surveillance cameras be disabled. Joe's deputy explains that the rats have eaten through the wires, causing the cameras to malfunction. However, the gang leader is not convinced and orders someone to check the cameras to ensure they are indeed disabled. Meanwhile, the guard who was stationed at the stairs and was shot finds that a crocodile has appeared. The crocodile begins to attack him and starts to eat him. The prison director descends with one of the gang members who is trying to gain her favor. She tells her that it's a shame what she's doing to herself. She must be a good person. However, this appeal has no effect. Cody speaks with Rafe and tells him to take his men and leave. Joe and the gang member reach the room with the surveillance cameras, but they find a flashlight lying on the floor in the water. She wants to understand why the flashlight is on the ground. As soon as Joe picks up the flashlight, she is startled to find Marcus's arm emerging from the ground. A crocodile appears on the stairs and begins to attack both the prison director and the gang member with her. As Joe is intelligent, she could escape from the crocodiles, while unfortunately, the gang member is eaten by them. The prison successfully escapes, slamming the door shut behind her. The gang leader becomes worried and tries to call his member, but there is no network coverage in the prison. He decides to go up himself to investigate the situation. The crocodiles in the camera room manage to escape and make their way to another area. The gang leader, upon reaching the location, encounters a severed head floating in the water, which belonged to one of his members. He continues to the camera room and finds only the prison director there. He asks about the gang member who was with her and if the crocodiles killed her. Joe asks how he found out. He points to a crocodile moving through the water. They both run towards the cell but find the door locked. Joe tries to get those inside to open the door, but they refuse. Unfortunately, the gang leader is attacked by a crocodile, which pulls him by the leg. Despite efforts to save him, no one can help, and the door is closed. Joe attempts to use a weapon, but her attempt fails. One of the gang members decides to open the cell door and releases the prisoners. However, he attacks the prison director, but neither side manages to overpower the other. The prisoner who was meant to be released turns against the remaining gang member, claiming he was never part of their group. He then points out that they now face a bigger problem with the crocodiles threatening to eat them and urges them to find a solution. A prisoner with knowledge about the crocodiles starts sharing what he knows, and the police officers who are also imprisoned try to come up with a solution to the problem. The prison director informs them that it's not just one crocodile, but 4. The gang man proposes using 2 jet skis he has to navigate through the water. Some of the prisoners dismiss the idea, suggesting they could simply fight their way through the crocodiles. However, one prisoner wisely points out that the crocodiles could be too large to handle in a direct confrontation. He then suggests an alternative plan. They should use openings in the ceiling to reach the roof and escape that way. They start climbing out, one by one, all the while scared of the situation. Meanwhile, the crocodiles are trying to break through the door. One of the men manages to open the door and attempts to call for help. Unfortunately, the person who could have helped him is someone with whom he had previously argued in the cell, so he decides to let go and not offer help. He won't have time to try again, and the crocodiles will start attacking and devouring him. As another crocodile approaches, one of the brave men shoots it, killing it. However, the crocodile still manages to drag him and starts eating him. Joe is deeply affected by the situation. Cody, who was the target of the gang, tries to calm her down and assures her that the whole situation isn't her fault, urging her to continue their path. They manage to reach the upper floor and continue their search for a solution. The prisoners become increasingly anxious and frustrated as they realize they have no food. The prison director asks for a chance to think and figure out a plan. Among the men, there are suspicions and thoughts of betrayal, with anyone who sees an opportunity to escape taking it. Cody, being more honorable, is less concerned about the immediate hunger and focuses on the situation. Joe inquires about the bullet they have, asking if it'll be enough or not. They start to split up, with the prison director taking Cody and the only black man in the group, while the rest stay behind. Joe and the men make their way to the upper floor, but it is covered in dust, and the conditions are poor. They try to find any weapons that might be useful. After resting for a bit from the journey, Joe asks Cody what the matter is, why his friends come and want to take him away. Cody explains his story to the prison director. He recounts that he was in Afghanistan, where he fell out of favor with the authorities after a fight with his team. Joe is surprised and asks why he was labeled as a police killer. Cody continues, explaining that he was desperately trying to make money and got involved in various illegal activities. Eventually, he met Rafe and his gang, who were in a similar situation. Rafe offered him a job for $20,000, promising that no one would die and that Cody would only need to drive a vehicle for the gang. The job was simply to transport some money from a specific location. During the mission, police officers showed up, leading to an inevitable shootout. Cody, unable to handle the chaos, took his car, accelerated with all his might, and fled with the money, planning to meet the gang and hand over the cash. Unfortunately, the police raided the meeting, and Cody was arrested while the rest of the gang escaped. As Cody recounts this, he notices a crocodile that has managed to get out through a hole in the room. He warns Joe, who tells him to take the gun and shoot the crocodile. The crocodile attacks a man with them, as he can't defend himself. Meanwhile, the group in the lower floor hear the gunshots, and those with weapons move to investigate. The evil white man goes to retrieve a gun from a nearby room and try to confront the officer with them. However, the smart prisoner among them will stop him, leading to a fight where the man ends up shooting meant for the officer beaten to unconsciousness, leaving the group on the upper floor to deal with the crocodile. They attempt to kill it, but will struggle to do so. The crocodile attacks and kills one of the prisoners before Joe finally manages to kill it. Meanwhile, on the lower floor, the remaining men finish their fight, but one prisoner dies from a gunshot. Cody and Joe descend from the upper floor using a pipe and kill one of the remaining gang members on the lower floor. Another crocodile appears and drags away the arrogant prisoner who had been causing trouble. Cody grabs a gun and uses a metal rod as a weapon. When another crocodile appears, a prisoner named Jim will attempt to handle it as if it were a tame animal, but ultimately eaten by it. Rafe then arrives with a rifle, kills the crocodile, and tells everyone to leave. Joe insists on implementing her own plan, telling them to go without her. Cody reluctantly agrees to leave her behind and says he will wait. Rafe hands her his rifle and they proceed to leave. Joe locks herself in a room to execute her plan while Rafe and Cody move on. Rafe suggests to Cody that they should leave Joe behind, claiming that the key to their escape is with him. Cody refuses and grabs the key, arguing with Rafe. They argue with each other. Rafe tries to calm Cody down, appealing to their shared history and suggesting that it's wrong to abandon someone who used to be in law enforcement. Cody starts to soften, but before he can fully agree, Rafe will turn on him, dragging him into the water and attempting to drown him. Joe uses the last bullet in the rifle to shoot at the pipes, causing them to burst and creating a diversion. She then locks herself in a room. The building burns and causes an explosion that kills Rafe. Meanwhile, Cody, who was struggling underwater due to Rafe's attempt to drown him, managing to escape from the water and check if Joe survived the explosion. They leave the prison and find that the flood has completely submerged the area, with homes and streets underwater. Joe is still alive, and Cody expresses his concern about being put in the cell. Joe mentions that all the 5 prisoners are dead. She asks him about the money from their last job, but Cody changes the subject, saying he'll see her soon. They part ways, each taking a different way. The movie ends. Subscribe to the channel if you liked the movie and activate the notification button to get more notifications.